people of different places, you can't expect them to speak the same.
Right.
I mean, accents is, yeah.
It's really universal. It's really, even you have an accent, you don't even know it.
Right, and you'll be like the type of person that I don't have an accent,
You
but
do.
when you get in front of somebody from, let's say, Washington, they're like, you have a country accent.
Yeah, they're going to call you out. They're going to let you know how you sound to them. What's good, y'all? It's the Demouchets REACT, and we're back with another video. Who we got today, C?
Today we're back with another American reaction. Super excited about this video, guys. If you're new to us and we're new to you, make sure you scroll down, hit that subscribe button, and turn on the post notification bell because we're on the road to 100K. And we cannot get there without you guys, all right? Join the family. Without further ado, let's get into the video.
Welcome, you sleep dreamers, to a really special video because today I'm joined by Anpu.
Hi guys, lovely to meet you.
So great to have you with us.
Thank you.
Now we are, well, two things. We're going to be talking about British identity today. We're going to have a discussion about that. We are where are we right now?
We are in one of my favourite parts of town, Covent Garden. It's quite a touristy spot, but also got lots of local culture, and it's absolutely lovely.
Yeah. It's amazing. I'm sure loads of you that have been to London have been to Covent Garden. It's got loads of like sort of street musicians and street artists, and cafes and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Anyway, so Amber, I want to talk about British identity, what that means in 2019. So Amber, your channel is a lot about identity. It's about British culture, but it's about identity.
Yeah.
So like, what's your story? What's your link to it?
Yeah. So why I talk about identity is because I feel like I've got various identities, and my subscribers are from all over the world. So I think it's important to embrace who you are. Right. And where you come from. And where you come from can mean lots of different things. For example, where your parents come from, where you're born, and you'll have different attachments to different places. And I think it's super important that there's no one definition or concept of where you're from.
Right.
So I think we're both born in England.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah? So, but then look, to be honest, we look different, right? It's the elephant in the room, and I think people who aren't from the UK will often assume that there's one kind of image of what it means to be British, for example.
I feel he's talking so right.
Yes, definitely.
He's talking really right. Like, he's coming through with some very good, informative ways of thinking, perspectives, and just the idea of just race and life. You know what I'm saying? So I like his angle.
He looks like he could be of Indian descent. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing it out there, just observation. So I like that because it has been like a culture shock. Not really a culture shock, but just oh my God, I thought everybody was that way. When we started reacting to this type of content, right, we thought we honestly didn't give it much thought. But here in America, we're characterized.
Right.
Categorized, whatever.
Categorized.
But I've heard of terms like British and I've heard of Black British. So with me thinking that he is Indian descent, like, I don't know, like, everybody's British? That's what
I know down here in the South, if we was to see a brother like that, exactly, like, we was to see him in the South, we would think that he's Indian on some level, because that's the majority of what we see when we see people with that skin tone, that hair texture, and you know what I'm saying, people of him. So, is that sound right? People of him? Yeah. Him. He's the guy. We're talking about him. Yeah, yes. Like, we see him, so we would think that he was Indian without even questioning it, and it wouldn't be on no disrespectful thing like that.
It's just an observation.
Just a thought, you know what I'm saying? Just a thought.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm ethnically Tamil, but I also identify as British.
Right.
So these are the kind of themes that I kind of speak about for my channel.
Right. That's fascinating, and I love that there's not one version of British identity.
Yeah.
I found that going abroad and teaching, that I had various different colleagues from different sort of backgrounds, all British, born in Britain and whatnot, but they were treated somewhat differently because they didn't meet the expectation of the students. If you weren't white, they didn't think you were British, and that's strange to me. And so identity, it takes so many forms, doesn't it? And I guess it's just something that I want to change that image, that being British can mean so many different things. And and you know, students, you guys coming to Britain, like not to expect one certain thing, but to expect London being one of the most multicultural cities in the world, and it's something we celebrate here. And it's one of the most, you know.
Okay, so one thing, he is right, but for me, I watch a lot of documentaries and things like that, and I remember there being this crime show, right?
Should we name it?
I don't remember the name. No? It was a crime show, and one of the locations of the crimes was based in London, and it was a black British girl. Mm-hmm. So I've never seen, you know, anyone other than black British or white British, and of course I know that there are more ethnicities there, but I like that, you know, he chose this person to do this video with, because I would have never known like there's a big population or a population there, you know. So I like that he's, you know, changing the narrative.
Yeah, I think they got a great angle with this conversation, because they're helping people understand that no matter where you are, there's going to be different walks, people who look like you and they're not from your background. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Or what mainstream media makes it out to be.
What mainstream media will makes it out to be. Yeah. Let's listen to it. Let's get into it more.
Yeah.
Thing that I love the most about Britain, really about London.
That's really nice of you saying that, because a lot of people don't have that opinion. So
yeah,
and I think that kind of is because of. Do you think geography has a big impact? So maybe Londoners view that as a very positive aspect of the city, but then people from elsewhere in other parts of the country might not?
Sure, certain, like, I mean, okay, like the urban centres, I think for sure multiculturalism is celebrated. I think London, Manchester, Birmingham, etc., like hugely celebrated. Yeah. Perhaps that feeling isn't felt in other parts of Britain, but it's for the individual. I don't know. I'm not sure. Yeah. Let's go back to London and to you growing up in Tooting. So you grew up in Tooting, southwest London. Mm-hmm. What's that like? What was that like?
So Tooting was an incredible place because it was so different to the other suburbs in London. So Tooting was a place known for its kind of South Asian diaspora. Mm-hmm. So when you walk down the streets of Tooting, you would find sari stores.
Right.
Kind of grocers who stock vegetables and fruits from all over the world, exotic plants and fruits. It's often a place to kind of celebrate who you are. And for example, there was a Hindu temple in Tooting. So people from the surrounding areas in London would go to Tooting and practice their faith. Right. But it's interesting because Tooting is currently known for being quite like a South Asian centre, but before South Asians, it was quite an Afro-Caribbean centre.
Right.
And before the Afro-Caribbean wave of migrants, it was known to be quite an Irish centre.
Right.
So Tooting has always been a very dynamic place and a place to grow up.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And that idea that, because in London there are certain groups that live in certain areas, and they are sort of almost like custodians of that area. So similar to Brick Lane, right? So in Brick Lane, sorry, it's really noisy over there. So in Brick Lane, there was traditionally, many years ago, a largely Jewish population, and then as they moved out, the Bangladeshi community moved in, and this idea that an area evolves, it changes. Now Brick Lane is quite hipster, it's very trendy.
Same with Tooting, actually.
Really?
Yeah. So it's becoming a bit more gentrified,
which is a whole different debate. Gentrification is a whole separate debate.
Yeah,
that's interesting. Very interesting, because. And I speak of the places that I was brought up a lot, so I want you to tune in too. Mm-hmm. Tune in too. But like in New Orleans, there's areas that are historically black, and then there's areas where there's a mixture. Then there's, the Caucasian. I feel like that sounds so bad, but Caucasian areas.
Yeah, I feel you.
And then there's like the German areas, the Irish areas, the Creole area. Like there's all of these areas, and like as custodians, like he was saying about the areas in London. So that makes me think, and I know that's everywhere, but like in a city that's multicultural as New Orleans, it plays a significant role in, like, if a person was to say, oh, I'm from New Orleans, and, you know, they're German, you know, to mainstream media, they'll be like, what, you from where?
Right.
But, you know, like,
yeah,
it's
so
like that.
I'm happy that we even grew up in an area like that was multicultural. Because it's the interactions that help us understand ourselves and people, and just know how to love on one another.
Right.
And speak with people without judging them. So
Right.
I feel like there are places that aren't multicultural.
Right, it is.
And I feel like they are speaking to a group of people that probably don't get to see other races as fluidly. So when they come across of them, if the media haven't already painted them a bad image, they're gonna probably they're gonna give them a chance or whatnot.
Right.
But if the media painted them a bad image and they're looking at the media and judging them based off what the world is showing the people to be, then yeah, it's gonna be hard for them to go to different schools like in London and see other people of their color and their kind and be like, what are you doing over here? Like, you know what I'm saying? So it's, for me, it was a blessing to, you know, grow up around multicultural people.
Yeah, definitely, because I feel like when there's these areas, from the outside looking in, they be like, no, everybody needs to mix. Everybody needs to gentrify.
You Americans.
Right. I don't, when it comes to like historic areas, I don't believe in gentrification. I don't, because I feel like you are knocking down a history. And me, who I am, I'm proud of who I am. I'm proud of my heritage. Yes, my people have an ugly history in this country, but I'm proud of that, and I'm proud that I was able to go to different schools and learn about people from other, you know, cultures and other ethnic backgrounds, because that made me an anti-racist person. I don't play the race card, but I'm going to, you know, state facts on, you know, systemic racism and things like that.
Right. But our help always did come from different races, whether you're a child and you're playing on the park or you're in school, or as you're growing and you're going to these different events, or however you did live your lifestyle. We always came to a part where you may go, you know, to a spot where you go get crawfish, and you ain't the only black person there. You're going to have a Caucasian. You probably going to have some Indians that's serving you. You know what I'm saying? Or some sort like that. So it's always a multicultural environment.
Yes, especially down south Louisiana.
Down south. You can speak for down south. Fact.
Yeah, because I know we've traveled some places in North Louisiana. It was like, we better get in the car and get on.
Yeah, it's all good. You feel me?
We're going to leave that.
Probably not even go into it. Complex issue. But yeah, this idea that these areas change and evolve and leave, you know, their mark, which is really beautiful, like the Hindu temple. Ambu did a great video going to East Ham, where you uncovered another really beautiful Hindu temple. Really so I'll link that up. Go check that out, guys. Let's talk about accents as well, because I think identity comes through accents. How would you describe your accent?
So this is really interesting because I've always been under the impression for such a long time that I've had a RP accent. But having done some research, I realised that might not be the case. It's kind of like a mix between RP, Emily, which I actually, really interesting enough, I actually watched your video about Emily. Was it like a year ago? Where you talked about Emily, which I thought was really interesting, and then I thought, right, do I have an Emily accent?
And how much of sort of your Tamil culture or heritage comes through in the accent from maybe your parents or something like that? Is there any influence at all? Or
to go back to what his question was, I do feel like living in Louisiana, there's so many cities, and everybody may have such a different way of speaking and having an accent, but you can tell they're from the South. You can tell they're from Louisiana, right? And that's just how it is. So I feel like we do have our culture with that, and through the way we're speaking. So I think that's unique.
Yeah, because I know when I met you, I had a strong New Orleans accent.
I had my own accent as well.
Lafayette. He don't like when I say Lafayette. Karen Crow. Accent.
Both.
And I know that there is a Baton Rouge accent. Like, there's accents in every city, and people of the same city, like New Orleans, people of the same city do not have the same accent. And a lot of people, they would tell people to say a certain word, and if they don't say it the way that they think it should be said, in the accent that they think it should be said, and oh, you're not from New Orleans. How you gonna tell somebody where they from? And then people like me who have gone on to get higher learning and then, you know, different certificates and taking different classes to have a more universal or more commercial type of accent.
Right, because there's places you want to go.
There's places I want to go, so I knew I couldn't bring that little New Orleans drawl.
Can't do it all this
everywhere, right? I could bring it at the cookout, but I can't bring it when I get on television.
Right.
Okay, on stage, right? So, you know, now some people, I get that I sound like I'm from Atlanta a lot for some reason.
Atlanta?
And I haven't gone to Atlanta yet. I've had no reason to go to Atlanta yet, so I don't even know how Atlanta people speak.
Like the real lingo of Atlanta people, it's different. Like you'll see it, you'll hear it over social media, but like I've never really I kind of maybe I think we was in California. Or was it California? And we was giving back a rental. The gentleman that we were speaking was from Atlanta.
Okay.
And he was like, "What up, king? What up, queen? How y'all feel?" Like the way he was talking, his language was very diverse, and he was like, "Hey, you from Atlanta?" So he's like, "Yeah, bro, this, that, and the third." So.
Yeah. So it's like people of different places. You can't expect them to speak the same.
Right.
I mean, accents is
It's really universal. It's really, even you have an accent, you don't even know it.
Right, and you'll be like the type of person that I don't have an accent, but when you get in front of somebody from, let's say, Washington, they're like, you have a country accent.
Yeah, they're going to call you out. They're going to let you know how you sound to them. And it's unique, though.
Yeah.
Largely influenced by the people you grew up with in terms of school and whatnot.
Very interesting question. I think that links into what we're going to talk about in the next theme, where I actually change how I speak depending on the social situation.
Right.
So in a largely kind of Tamil social setting, the way I speak English often changes and is more kind of influenced by my mother tongue, Tamil.
Right.
However, to answer your question, I do think the majority of my accent comes from mingling with kind of, how would you put it, externally, British life externally.
Right.
So it's not really influenced. How I'm speaking to you guys now is not influenced by my mother tongue or my Tamil heritage.
Right.
I don't think it is.
Yeah.
I might be unaware.
and we're going to talk to you on your channel about this, about how one changes an accent depending on your situation, and I personally think it's really emotionally intelligent.
Yeah.
But it's up for debate. We can talk about it later.
And do you know what's really interesting? Even though I was born in England, Tamil was my first language.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So I was taught Tamil at home until the age of 3, where English isn't used in my household. It's only when I went to nursery that I started to learn English.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, of course my parents did kind of introduce English at the same time, but really the primary language at home was Tamil. And so perhaps deep rooted in my childhood that there are influences with my mother tongue and how it kind of influences my accent.
Yeah. This is really interesting, particularly for my audience who are learning English.
Yeah.
Do you consciously remember learning English? Is it something that or was it just that you were so young, it was just...
I think it is because I was just so young.
Okay.
But I do remember having to ask my parents, oh, this is the Tamil word for it, but what's the English word? And my dad and mum would have to teach me. Even to this day, certain ingredients in cooking, because I've always cooked at home, and I've seen my mum and dad cook.
Yeah.
I only know the Tamil word for certain ingredients and certain vegetables.
Okay.
So I think that there's the kind of continuous learning aspect when you are bilingual, when you grow up in a kind of ethnic household.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah, I've spoken to a lot of friends who have a similar thing where they're second generation and there is this culture clash between first generation and second generation. Tell me about the struggles. It's to do with work. What other aspects? How is that sort of balance?
Yeah, that's really interesting.
I'm gonna go back off what he's saying. I feel like we do have a culture clash with our generation.
Here in America.
In America, yes, with our generation. Only because coming up in my home, I felt like we did watch Roots. So we had an understanding of what slavery was and how it impacted the black community.
Yes.
But I know there are some homes who will not implement that into their children's mindset to have an understanding on slavery. So their culture, when they're living and doing the things that they're doing, they don't know the tools of what happened back in the past or the history, you know what I'm saying? Right. So I feel like that's the only kind of culture class that I can speak on.
Yeah. I believe so. You're right. When we were coming up, our family had us watch Roots every summer. Oh, y'all don't have nothing to do? Learn about your people. So we watch Roots every summer, and we went to schools where they had Black History Month programs. We went to schools where they didn't just teach, oh, your people came off of a boat. We went to schools where we had, we were fortunate enough to have Black educators who wanted us to learn the truth.
I appreciate that because I feel like we had moments where we get our class and we're going to the library and they have a Black speaker. And then we'll talk about certain topics. Yeah, I remember those days.
Yeah. I feel like today they're doing the children a disservice with taking critical race theory out of schools. I know that is a very political topic. I know we don't discuss political things on this channel, but that needs to be said as a Black woman in America who care about other Black children learning the truth. And not just other Black children learning the truth, but other races, being appreciative of being able to befriend other Black children.
Right, understanding
back in the day,
everything
back in the day, that would not have been able to happen. And I have white friends,
right? Facts.
So that's why I believe that critical race theory needs to stay in schools. Take it how you want to.
Yeah.
And banning African American studies. In certain states that's going through that now. I feel like they're doing a huge disservice to children. Especially
if they're trying to attack their identity, because I feel like when you know where you come from, you know who you are. And you know how to operate in the life that you're living in. You know what I'm saying? So keep them with the information they need to be better people instead of taking it from them so they can be lost and have to be dependable people. You know what I'm saying? Oh, that's probably what it is. That's a bar. Because when you take an identity, they now become dependent upon people who can help them find who they are. But then, see?
Yes, and that's why education needs to start at home.
Yeah, so that kind of goes back with this question, though, like about the culture clashes.
Our side of it here in the United States.
Yeah, big facts.
Question. Really, really interesting question, because I feel like not only have I lived it, but anyone who kind of has parents who are kind of first generation migrants would have experienced this too. Kind of, it's a world away from home, and so you often find that the older generation are kind of getting accustomed to the new life here. For example, my parents, one thing that they struggled with is kind of the language side of things.
Right.
So you'll often find miscommunication is a really big problem.
Right.
As I speak to my parents in Tamil, but my Tamil isn't exactly perfect. I do struggle with Tamil because I can't practice Tamil here in London, for example. So between the first generation and second generation, you find miscommunication in language, and this often brings about arguments at home. I found that cousins who speak worse Tamil than I do.
You know what? I like where he's going with this, and it brings up a question. Do you think this has everything to do with new school and old school ways of teaching? Because I feel like as we, grow throughout life from our parents, our grandparents, they came from a time themselves, so they're taught different ways of doing things and how theirs, was supposed to operate during that time. And now, like he was saying, we have these new schools where the communication is totally different from back in the day. And it does cause conflict and arguments, because how can you tell us something about an electronic when you never had it back in your day? You get what I'm saying? And that's just an example.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a new school, old school thing.
With his with his perspective, I understand it, but at the same time I don't understand it, because my great grandmother, who I did not meet, was from Honduras, and I feel like that would have been like more along like what he's saying about new school, old school, because she come from a whole nother country to this country, and I just wish I would have been able to look at that dynamic, because my great grandmother was very young, during that time, so she grew up here, so she knows English, she knows, all of that. So, but yeah, I could see how it could be a bit of a culture clash, like y'all saw how we just, spoke on our culture, but to throw in a whole nother language.
The language thing too, conflict. Right? Now you got people who's going to stay true to their native, and you got some that's going to stay true to their new ways of speaking because of the people they can, be in business with or whatnot. So, he's asking some very careful to answer questions. Like you got to be careful with these questions.
Yes.
They can't even communicate with their grandparents, but the grandparents don't know a single word of Tamil.
Right.
And this often causes fights.
Okay.
So this is one element of life which certain diets reflect. The second element is, I guess, cultural values, societal values. For example, values around marriage, values around relationships, you know, arranged marriages, things like that.
Yeah.
And then in terms of kind of societal mindsets, it's different. It's different. And so I think meeting halfway can be tough.
Right.
For certain generations. So there is that mismatch there as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
We talked briefly earlier about your accent. Talking about British identity. I want your opinion on this. So in London, if you come to London, for the young generation particularly, you're going to hear multicultural London English. It's the accent spoken by a vast majority of young people, and I think it's a magnificent accent that represents what London is. I want your opinion on it. I know you've done a video on the Emily accent, on the slang words. Like, I mean, do you agree with me? Is it an accent you hear as you're walking around?
I do, and to add to that, London is a huge place, so I think certain boroughs and certain districts have their own accent.
Oh, for sure.
I think there needs to be more research done into this, but I'm a massive believer that, for example, when I enter Whitechapel and areas of East London, I do hear a different accent.
Right.
It's amazing in the same city how you can have various accents, little twangs, little slight kind of influences from mother tongue, and that's really, really interesting to see.
Oh, definitely. And multicultural English, I mean, I've done various videos on it, but it's an influence of the Caribbean community, the African community, the Bangladeshi community. Every community in London pretty much has added its own flavour to this accent. Obviously, the native Cockney, white working class Cockney accent is in there as well. It's a bit of everything.
Yeah.
And you're right. There's no stuff. I mean, there's such little research into the accent. I want to do more about it. But and certainly multicultural London English doesn't feature in any English course book.
No,
you're not going to hear it in any English lesson. And yet, when you come to London,
it is the most prevalent.
You'll hear it. Yeah. I mean, of course, we're in Central London. We're in Covent Garden. There's every different nationality here. You're going to hear all kinds of accents.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, like multicultural English is really prevalent. And what I find interesting as well, it's a young.
It changes with time, though.
Yes, it does.
Like, if you look at it now, and I was just thinking as I'm listening to it, the babies who speak it, our kids may say something in a way or in a turn that makes me feel old. Because I'd be like, we ain't never say nothing like that, bro.
Yes.
Like, y'all got some swag to y'all, how y'all speaking about certain topics. You feel me? So, I don't see that ever probably, well, I'm not going to say ever, but making it into like a book where they can be teaching in this type of way of doing things, because it changes with time. It's always going to change. The next generation underneath them is going to have a whole new way of speaking too, so it's going to continuously grow.
Right. I remember coming across this video. I believe I shared it with you, and it was of black military men. They were speaking about the problems that they were having, the racial problems that they were having here and abroad. They felt that abroad they were looked at as a man, but here they were not looked at as a man. And the man in the video, he had a certain cadence. And I'm like, when did we lose that? It
that was fire.
Like
I remember
a
that
melody.
Bro, it's like the blues, jazz, swag type of like drag with it. Oh, yeah,
like, when did we lose that?
Yeah, we're going to have to find that video. That video was fire.
Accent at the moment, but as people grow, it will become the accent.
Generational divide again.
Right.
The accent's used.
Exactly. So, there will be, politicians with the multicultural London English.
Right.
There will be, there are already musicians, but this accent will become more prevalent. And so, I think it's important to get to know what it is and how it works and whatnot. Okay, my arm is absolutely killing me.
I know you've got an amazing job.
But this has been amazing. I really love this conversation. It's a really important discussion.
Yes, that was a great video.
That was a different one, y'all. Y'all sent that one in. That was an angle I was not expecting.
Yes, we learned a good. I love that he featured him.
Yeah, we have to go check his channel out, because he was talking about the British slang and everything, and how the growth has changed and whatnot. And I like that. I like that.
Yes. We hope you guys enjoyed this video with us. Like this video, subscribe, turn on the post notification bell. We have enabled our super thanks if you like support the channel that way, as well as our join feature to become a VIP member of the channel. Sending your reaction request through our description box below. We'll see you soon.
Peace.